Hi, everyone. My name is AHURA, and I'm here on the podcast with Ani. You might know her as the mother of Bad Times Disco, the digger of records. And today we're going to talk about her upcoming party on 23rd of November. Please do check it out. You can find out more on Bad Times Disco on Instagram. And I'll just let you do a little introduction of yourself. Hi, Ani. Nice to see you today.
Hi everyone. I'm the BTD mother. I really liked that intro, actually. I'm Ani. I'm from New York. I've been living in Hong Kong now for 5 years and running BTD. We also ran a record store called Bad Times Records. So I'm sure people have heard of one or the other. It'd be great for people to check out the party. We unfortunately closed the record store because it was just a pop-up, but it was a really fun 5-month experiment. And it reminds me a little bit of this community radio that we're in, actually.
Yeah, and I think that's going to set us up for a lot of conversations that we're going to have coming up. But before we delve into that, we're going to talk about the interconnections of MÖTH and our inspiration with BTD. I first want to talk about just the event itself. Tell us a little bit more about the event. Give us a little introduction. Kind of what was the inspiration and what sparked the inspiration behind the event itself?
Sure. Bad Times Disco actually started out as us just selling records. So me and the co-founder, Yuki, we are diggers and we started selling records together. We eventually started a party mostly because I found out that no one has ever booked Yuki in Hong Kong. And it really astounded me because he's an incredible DJ, he's a pure digger, a very pure music lover. So we started parties because we play records and honestly because nobody was booking Yuki. I got other bookings, but I think it was very special to play together and to do something like that. I think BTD now is very evolved and very different today than it was in the past. And I think it's because of a creative direction that we leaned into. I would maybe describe it as a very holistic understanding of what underground dance culture is about. So there are a lot of, music enthusiasts, DJs, bookers who are a little bit snobby about music, in my opinion. They think that everything is purely about DJs or the equipment that they use. I have a very holistic approach to parties where I think that everything is everything. Every aspect of a party is important. So mainly we do BTD in a way that is encompassing of many different elements. So it would be visual, audio visual. The sound system has to be a great sound system for me. I like to see a lot of multimedia, a lot of artists get involved. I also really like to hype up our crowd. So I will literally sell tickets to our party by telling people that we take so much care and so much pride in who comes to the party. And it really feels like a community because it is one. So I think that's the overall vision of BTD, and the next party that we're doing is like a season opening. So what that means is that the BTD season is kind of short and sweet every year. I go on tour for the summer, and so we take a break.
Which you just came back from.
I just got back like a week ago.
And already at work.
Already at work. Hong Kong's so stressful. So our season is short. It's basically November to June. We only do about 4 parties. And I think I actually have to communicate this more to people, why we call it a season and why we do like a season opening and closing and why every party is so special. When you miss one, a lot of time goes by. It's the vibe of the next one is that it's a reunion. It's been 5 months since our last one.
Yeah, and you were talking about taking care of your audience. I think I actually got introduced to BTD through one of your parties. And it was actually not too long after you had one of your record store opened. And I think it was really my first introduction to a party that I think resonated with who I wanted to be, I guess, at that time, and the values that I had. And you know, it's really something that I look forward to whenever there is a BTD party.
Yay.
And I think that's really kind of rare in Hong Kong. I think there's a lot of transience in the city, but you've really established something long term here, which, you know, is always our goal and what we do. But I think to kind of be in the stream of movement of the city, of the social change in the city, constant change, people coming in, people going out, to maintain something stable and long term is, I think, to me, something that we don't talk about enough. And as an organizer, you feel the kind of the struggle of that, but as an audience member, you just want to go to the next fun party, right?
Yeah,
so how do you actually maintain that stability? And
I was talking about this with somebody yesterday, and I think it relates a little bit to what we were casually talking about before this started. But through BTD, I've seen people, you know, leave Hong Kong or break up with their partners. Like, when you have a relationship with your audience, that means that this party is 4 years old.
Yeah.
So we've known people for 4 years now. And so you see them going through a lot of changes. I think it points to the fact that I don't see people as ATM machines. I don't see them as customers or clients. Yeah. We have a relationship with the people who come to the parties because they give us energy and we give them energy, and it's an exchange of ideas and energy. So I really feel it when somebody is not there. Somebody who I think is a regular, who is bringing a lot of energy and joy and connecting so much to everybody around them. We do miss them. So I think it comes from a very sincere place of wanting regulars to come back. And I think people like to be invited, and people like to feel that they're part of something, even when they can't come. There are all sorts of reasons for why, if you do 4 parties a year, many of your regulars are not even able to come to all of them because everyone's busy and the parties are so rare, so sporadic. At the same time, I think everybody really keeps an eye out, and they really try their best to come because we have that like personal connection to them, and they feel really cared after, and they feel that somebody notices if they're missing, which is rare in a city where everyone is so transient. And sometimes when you come back to Hong Kong, you're really like, you know, did anybody miss me while I was gone? Because so much happens in that time frame. Yeah.
And I mean, you kind of touched on, like, you know, just like the approach that you take to bringing in an audience. Like, to me, you've always been a person who cares about bringing the quality to the party. And when people are buying a ticket, you are really just getting your money's worth at the very least. And on top of that, getting these long-term relationships. And I think, to me, again, who would have thought that when you actually care about the people that you are hosting, and about the fact that this culture of dance is really about safe space and community, who would have thought that they'd want to come back, you know? And you see a lot of spaces that don't really cater to that really look at the crowd as a business, which I understand. You know, sometimes you have to like make it work and survive, but to me it's like it's also really, really important and natural to bring something positive to the table for your crowd, and something valuable that they're gonna like cherish with themselves for a while. Like, I don't think they're disconnected, you know? Like, I think we, like, what you guys do and that has been a big inspiration to what we do, is that we really just care about the people that come to our parties and providing them the safest space possible, and make sure that they have free water. Like, I think you guys were one of the first parties to do that, which we were like, we have to do the same. So that when you are paying a more premium price, I guess, or like a higher price, which I don't think you guys even fall into, because you have all these tiers, you know. And to me, it's like, we're not doing these nice things for our audience just to sell more, but there's this magical place where, when you care about the people that you're bringing in, they care about you back, you know, and it's like it's like a two-way street, and it's not necessarily for your fulfillment only, but like it actually helps everyone. And so how did you actually push for, let's say, free water and financial aid tickets that you guys have, or where was the idea behind this?
I think I actually spoke with somebody from MÖTH who wrote an op-ed about the free water, right? But for me, that was not even a thought. So it's something I thought very little about. For that, we just do it. I think the idea is that you try not to think about how much money you would make if you sold water.
Yeah.
So I don't even put it into my mind that this is what I'm potentially losing. I don't want to care. I don't want to know. I don't want to care. Financially, environmentally, this is not what I'm standing for. So we're providing water for people. That's our stance, you know. For other things, I'm very inspired by some festivals and some parties that do a income-based ticketing approach. As you know, also as MÖTH knows, there are collectives who are really prioritizing inclusion and sort of financial accessibility based on identity, based on sexual orientation. This is important. I do support this. What I do see a lot less, what is really rare and perhaps even a harder model to enforce with accountability and transparency and all of these things, is an income-based ticketing model is really rare around the entire world. And I think that in the current economy and in especially Hong Kong's like extremely stratified economy, we are doing an important thing by talking about class, talking about financial accessibility. So again, that's just something that we do. I try not to really think about the financial repercussions. In the end, you hope that your crowd is loyal and honest and that people can pay what they can pay. Some people pay higher ticket prices because they're homeowners and they have generational wealth. And we ask that they do that so that they can support us doing this, you know, income-based ticketing model.
Like, I always think about the fact that, you know, like whatever your class background is, or whatever your background is as a person, I think it's important to acknowledge that in this present moment, this is the circumstance that we're in. And for us to be able to live as equals, we do need to contribute differently. You know, that's actually the only way. Because we're entering this in a very unequal field. And if you do believe in the fact that we're all supposed to be living as equals, in this present moment, we have to, I guess, make different financial contributions to the things that we love. And it's interesting because when we did MÖTH, we had a financial aid program, but it was very, very underused. I'll put it that way. And we really tried.
I can tell you from my experience doing the income-based ticketing model is that we have to actively reach out to people and we have to kind of encourage people to overcome their shame because there's a lot of shame in asking for a lower price, a lot of shame around money. So I think that this is a very deep issue and something that is very culturally ingrained in Hong Kong. So we have to do more. It's like we expect people to come to us and to reach us with what we have provided. But for BTD, we do a lot of outreach. It is so much communication. It is like me sending a message on WhatsApp to people individually, or DMing people, DMing service workers, for example, because they don't even know that they can, you know, come to the party, or that we would not turn anyone away. So it's very hard. I would say it's an uphill battle, but at least if you're talking about class and about money, you're doing the first thing. And then people can maybe open up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we actually kind of, that's where we were at towards the end of the time that we were throwing parties. We really were like, guys, like, you know, let's push as much as we can to make sure that people know that there's financial aid available. And even after that, I would say, like, in our 8 months, in our basically 8 month run with doing events, we only had 25 people that had registered for this program. And even though we have, like we have early bird tickets so that people who are, want to save money, they can kind of do that, people would really buy last minute. And I think this is something interesting about Hong Kong. But I also think it was to overcome this kind of shock value of, again, a party caring about the fact that you can't go to events because you don't have enough income. Like, I think this is just a shocking thing in Hong Kong in the first place, because there's very little opportunity. There are very little like environments where you can actually feel like the people behind the operation are actually thinking about you more than once when it comes to non-profitable things. They're constantly strategizing about how to make more money from you and how to sell more tickets and how to make their profit margins or whatever better. But there's rarely any conversation about, safety, for example, right? Like all these basic things that I think really, really matter in bringing people in. And maybe I'll talk about your team and the people that you work with, because I see a lot of familiar faces. And how did you guys meet actually as friends? Like, did you meet through the parties, the people that you're currently working with? I know Slavica and,
right. So BTD has a production team, and then we have like a staff for our parties. I think, yes, I've met everyone on the production team through the parties. It has changed like throughout the years. We have people come and go. But currently it's Slavica, Elsie, Fred, and myself, and then the staff is maybe like a larger staff of maybe 15 to 20 people. We're trying to recruit them all from the parties. Some people, they do DM me and ask me to work at the parties because they heard that we're one of the parties like paying people, so they just want to work, they want to get paid. They don't want to pay for a ticket. But to me, it also seems a little bit like, I don't know that they would want to stay as part of the staff. I don't know that they would be invested in the party. So we're trying to have like a rapport with the staff where everybody actually just comes back. So the staff, as well as the people who attend the party, they just all want to come back. So we make a good environment where they do want to come back. And I think that is the current like constellation of staff that we have. And I think you formerly worked at the parties, so we want people who are involved with music or music lovers or who DJ themselves, who work at other parties. I think this kind of nightlife understanding is really important. It's different working at a party than working at a cafe. It's a different pressure. You have to deal with people behaving differently, and so we also want a staff that's going to stand up for themselves and not allow for like disrespectful behavior. They're seasoned nightlife people at this point, I would say.
And I mean, like working as a staff with you guys, I mean, the reality is all the experienced staff that I see working at BTD, they genuinely care about people having a good time, and not only having a good time, but making sure that everyone's safe and that everything's going well, and that there's a sense of responsibility that I really, really appreciate. Because again, being staff at a party is not just having a free ticket and getting a drink coupon. That's really the bare minimum. And to me, it's like you are there and you actually are really, really important in the operation of everything that's going on. And you should be fairly compensated. And at the same time, you are really responsible for creating like a positive environment for people's life. Like this is like part of people's livelihood, right? Like their friends, when they go out with them, they want to feel safe. They want to feel involved and part of the community. And I think I love seeing recurring staff. Like whenever I go to a party, I see the same staff again, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember
great.
you. I got like drinks from you last time.
I love becoming friends with staff at like my favorite clubs, my favorite bars. When I feel that relationship, that's when I've really developed a relationship with the venue. Because normally as a DJ, my first relationship is with the booker, and then sometimes the owner. But it's when you know the staff and when you feel that the staff are like well taken care of. They're compensated, they're respected, they're not being asked to do crazy things. that's when you really feel like, oh, this venue is like my home now.
No, exactly. Yeah. And we've like there are a lot of times where there's controversies that break out about staff treatment at venues.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's a really good reference point
really
for
common.
how much the venue, I guess, actually cares about the well-being of the people that go there. And personally, I wouldn't want to go to a place that doesn't really care about my well-being,
Yeah.
I think that's really my number one priority. But yeah, and also I guess you kind of just meet friends throughout this process, and I think all of my closest friends I've either made friends through MÖTH and through that process, and I think those are my closest friends now, or they're actually like my friendships have been strengthened in the process of doing this. And I also want to talk about that element because the scene in Hong Kong is really small. And you do meet people at these events, and those are really moments for you to develop your relationships with people. Whether it's a breakup, it could be a breakup. It could be it could be that your relationships actually even becomes better through partying. And I think why do you think that's important in Hong Kong? Because what's the difference between someone going to a commercial club versus coming to one of the BTD parties?
I don't see this just as a dynamic in Hong Kong. I think that this is what underground nightlife culture is about around the entire world. So, in my opinion, you're a little bit defined by what you go to and who you're friends with. So, I can tell a lot about a person by the parties that they go to. And for a lot of the underground DJs, we know what a DJ's style is like based on the parties that they play at. So if I throw out a few party names, people know it, then they know what I play. They know kind of my vibe. And so that's very important to me. I use parties and collectives to define myself. And so what I think that BTD and MÖTH, they definitely serve that purpose in Hong Kong. If somebody goes to these events, they're not just going. They are identifying with these communities to a certain extent. And that tells you something about them and the values that they share. And in the end, also, it's a personal thing for me. In the end, this isn't just work. This isn't just something personal. This is really my identity. So it's actually a little bit hard for me to have friendships that are completely outside of BTD. If at some point I have a friend who hasn't come, I feel a little hurt. I feel like, oh, you don't want to come support this thing that I care about so much, I talk about all the time. So it almost becomes a little bit of a filter as well. Not saying that all of your friends need to be DJs, all of your friends need to be a nightlife, but your friends will inevitably care about the things that you care about. And we do this for our friends. I'll go to exhibits and I'll go to my friends movie openings and their plays and their shows. And so that's the way that we show up for each other. That's the way that we support each other. It's for sure, BTD has led to all of my close friendships.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot about, just the act of DJing, and every time you DJ, you're actually honoring a lot of other producers or artists that have been making the music that you're sharing with the world. And each of those artists have tons of historic references as to why they were making what they're making. And I think it's that sense of connectivity that leads to the friendships. And that's
ideally it should be, but it isn't always that way in music. So I think that's another thing of what BTD is trying to do. That's the reason why we engage with records, because I think you can really understand music history a lot more easily and visibly and physically. You'll connect more to actual music history through records and other formats. Because it's really hard for us. We're living in the 21st century in this time of an ongoing genocide and crazy AI. It's very hard for us to connect to the past. And I think humans are also a little bit doomed to forget. So
I guess
hard.
It's almost like a coping mechanism to forget, and to conveniently let go of what has happened in the past. to kind of temporarily make yourself feel better. And I think when you look at any kind of music, we were talking about this with like our volunteers at the radio the other day. We were talking about like why, let's say, I enjoy all types of music, and it's because almost all types of music that you see right now originates from a time where people couldn't actually use words, or they didn't even have the rights to stand up for themselves, and they use music as a medium to liberate themselves from a very tough situation, which you kind of see from hip hop, you see from jazz, from the African American like slave enslavement kind of like brutal whatever industry that was at that time. You see it from Brazilian funk and from the slums. You see it in just like rhythmic music in the Middle East, you know, and like the dabke and like Palestinian dabke, like all like music is a really powerful tool for those who really don't have any power in society or any stance in society, and they're being subject to very difficult conditions. So and most popular music that you see right now, including, for example, I play like TikTok rage music, which for some people feels like weird, I guess, in a way. But I say that most of this rage music actually originates from people that were under a lot of difficult circumstances historically, and they had to express themselves with anger through music. So I find it really, really frustrating when people abuse that. You get what I mean? Like, you have this beautiful, powerful art form, which is music, that is being used to liberate the masses, and you don't see appreciation for that in that way. And I think like I don't like how music is reduced to entertainment, and just like as a little daily activity that you're doing while you're washing the dishes, right? Every music has a story in it, whether it's direct or indirect. Whether it's like, you know, like the white techno culture stealing from black techno, and, you know, not even when you're hearing that techno, there's still the story of the original people who have made that music. So I think like coming back to records, like how did you get into collecting records in general and like selling them? Because it is the physical experience of connecting with history. It's almost like people have this connection to physical artifacts that I don't think we have in music, that we're trying to compensate for by selling merch and things like that.
I think humans are very, very physical, very touch oriented naturally. I mean, I've been thrifting, constantly treasure hunting, if you want to say, like since I was a kid. So I consider thrifting and the secondhand economy like something that I grew up with, and I consider inherently very sustainable, very pleasurable experience for me. I'll be very driven by my own aesthetic, my own taste, and my interest in history, my interest in a certain visual language or design from, let's say, the 60s, 80s, etc. I got into records when I was living in Rio. Brazil had a very strong phonographic industry. So Brazil pressed and Brazil also imported, and it has a very strong music scene. It's kind of amazing. If it wasn't for Rio and if it wasn't for Brazil, I don't really know if I would have gotten into records or gotten into DJing. Again, you'll never know what you would have done, but there is no place in the world, in my opinion, where the music culture is as strong as Rio. So it'll just infect you like a disease. Everybody knows the lyrics of every song. Everybody plays an instrument. Everybody is a DJ. Everybody does something with music. So very naturally, you begin to see yourself as, oh, this is also something I could do, something I could be interested in. And I began to collect records there. And then by the time I came to Hong Kong, I was already DJing, collecting records. I actually came to Hong Kong from Lebanon. That was the last stop on my trip before I came. And this is before the explosion in the port. This is before Israel's invasion into Lebanon. I really experienced like an amazing Beirut, the spontaneous protest that erupted in 2019, but also all the music and all the parties that were part of those protests. Very similar to Brazil, very similar to kind of the vibe, the relationship with music there. and
Even like
I brought a
Iran
lot
is
of
like
records.
that.
Yeah.
Like Iran is like that, where with the Iranian government kind of like the Islamic regime, dictatorship regime taking over in like 1979. One of the first things that they did was to actually ban music, and I think it kind of shows you how powerful it is and how scared they are of it as a tool to actually give voice to people who don't have that. And that's why Middle Eastern culture is very strong with music. Like, even, we would always have like family arguments when I was young, but we would go to a family party and we would just dance it off. And I honestly think that is a really beautiful, beautiful reminder to each other that the world is a lot vaster than we think it is, and we can all connect through music. And I think when I came to Hong Kong, I actually see music seen in a similar way when people look, but it's very nostalgic. When people look at 80s kind of like canto pop, they feel so emotionally in touch with that. So I do want to say, like, I do want to kind of just highlight how powerful music is, and how I see myself as, let's say, as an artist. And I want to ask you the same question. As me as an artist, I'm looking for a medium to tell story. That I think is important for our people to hear, that I think is going to help me uncover more about myself and the world around me. And I actually chose music for like several reasons, but I would ask you, why did you choose music, or was that an intentional choice, and how did that come to be?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. Sometimes DJs have these like philosophical, DJ kind of conversations. I think for me personally, this is just something that very naturally happened.
Yeah.
It was not planned. It just happened that I, decided to DJ, and I was collecting records, and I started playing, and my career grew, and I do a party. I think that before I got into music, it was very clear to me that my entire career and what I wanted to do, both professionally and personally, because you need to organize on a personal grassroots level, everything that I do is connected to the pursuit of and the purpose of a different world and a society that we currently live in. Yeah. So whether that's through journalism, whether that's through working with NGOs, whether that's through doing a party, I think I'm very committed to thinking of how we can resist individualism, resist neoliberalism, how we can create a more collectively oriented society, an economy that works for the people and for the planet. So I think that everything that I do is connected to that pursuit. And I would say that through music, of course I have political values, of course I have personal values that are part of what I do. But for music, I also have a pure musical goal as well, which is that all DJs, and all producers, and all musicians, we all want to push our sound. We love our sound. If I wasn't connected to my sound, I wouldn't do it. And I think that through my sound, what I love, I have really found a very niche subgenre of electronic dance music and a global scene that has embraced me, and one in which I feel supported. I feel I can support other people. This is how we book and play across the world and support each other. We want to push this sound. We think that it's marginalized because of commercial EDM and because of honestly we call it like a billionaire techno industry. So that's on a pure musical level. But I do feel very connected to a sense of purpose. It's just not as purely artistic as some people would like to claim, because they see themselves as apolitical. But it's very holistic. We can be artistically motivated. We can have a strong vision as artists, and we can also be very connected to society and to what's going on in real life. We're part of a larger society. There's no way to put blinders on and be everything is just about music.
And that you shouldn't bring politics into music. Which we've heard that phrase before. And I think that's that to me is silly It's so silly because the music is by the people for the people. Like you can never disentangle music from people, and I think and their stories, and I think a lot of the times that's political. That's considered a political topic. But I always want you to think about like where kind of music came from in the first place, and
You won't be
when
able
you're
to
trying
convince
to
these people.
yeah, and like when you're trying to detangle the music from the politics, you're actually just lying to yourself that it can be detangled in the first place. So
Typically, it's very privileged people who are saying these things. So a lot of people who want to remain apolitical, they don't want to look at their own privilege, whether or not it's, you know, gender, race, class. So their privilege has allowed them to do very well in this world and has conferred, you know, opportunities to them.
And that is political.
It's hard to look at that and admit that, and it's hard to imagine a different world.
And it's interesting when you say, let's say that they like, you know, when people make the decision to not bring politics into music, that is a political decision, in my opinion. You know, like at the end of the day, it's gonna benefit them because they can keep their business going and whatever, you know, and it won't divide, it won't like actually piss people off, because in the capitalist world, you want to please absolutely everyone so that they just buy your tickets, which to me is just absurd. You know, to just please everyone is like a ridiculous concept, which is a neoliberal concept.
I will,
think.
if you want to understand the Brazilian DJ scene, I just came back from Brazil, so that was the last stop of my tour before I came back. You would just have to understand that Brazil is becoming increasingly neoliberal, and all the DJs want to do is like, they don't want to upset anybody, because if they upset somebody, they'll lose a gig. So everybody is just so fake to each other, and it's very hard. It costs you to have a spine, I think, in the 21st century. So everybody is trying to be nice to everybody because we're all freelancers.
And I think, again, it's really unfortunate that you have to kind of play those games to get somewhere, quote unquote. And I've seen pockets of joy where people don't have to do that, and they actually are authentically themselves, and that's what.
Hopefully, are we that pocket of joy? Or is this a pocket?
I would say I'd be lying if I said that I made every decision that I've made without, you know, some ounce of that. I think we're all infected by that to some degree, right? And I don't even want to, like, I don't have the sense of, let's say, righteousness, that I'm always making the right decisions, but I also will say I'm a lot more aware of it now, and I think I'm a lot more present with it, and I've very much defined what kind of life I want to live, and that's definitely not in my book of life, I guess. And then you start, I guess also being able to recognize it in the first place and not normalizing it, because I think we wanted to talk about the neoliberal thing and the cancel culture and this like new sense of individualism, which is very dominant in Hong Kong. It's really an individual society, and it's a very hierarchical, even when there are pockets of community, like when it comes to your family, when it comes to your work. The moments in which you interact with other people are so hierarchical that it makes you think that every social interaction has to be hierarchical and has to be strategic, which it doesn't. I don't even want to go into like breaking that down for you, but it's a thing even in Hong Kong, like this mentality of like the me mentality is really, really common. And there are very few groups that are actually, you know, trying to gather people together as a larger community. We were talking about, you said there was a point where you were gathering people around and making efforts and uniting the Hong Kong music scene. How was your experience with that? What did you learn from it, and what advice would you give to anyone trying to go for
I don't
that?
even want to comment too publicly about that, only to say that I had to exit a WhatsApp group that I myself created. So, you know, I think I had the best intentions for wanting to create a more collaborative culture with other promoters in Hong Kong. but ultimately we have to have the same values.
Yeah.
So now I'm more focused on finding promoters who have the same values.
Yeah.
And then I think together, I think we can communicate more and support each other more. And so I realized that you have to start a little bit less ambitiously.
Yeah.
And focus on the relationship and focus on the values that you share with that person. But yeah, just unfortunately, the whole music scene didn't want to kind of collaborate together in that way.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Maybe that's not the place where we're at now.
Yeah, and I think when the time is right, I think it will happen. And I always feel like people need to kind of understand the value of that in the first place and not look at it as a constant compromise, you know. And I think coming to kind of the idea of, let's say, bringing people together, I just want to talk about the kind of your efforts in bringing people together. We were talking about our shared efforts. So like maybe I can give a little backstory to people because like for me, we actually started MÖTH as means of bringing the queer and femme communities together in a safe space. And I think safe space was a really big important thing. And like a big inspiration behind what we did was Bad Time Disco. And to be honest, we really don't see anyone else doing it even to this day. I do see pockets of it and I do see attempts, and I really do appreciate anyone trying to be there for others in this city. I think that's a rare occurrence. I was like, there's James Baldwin quote going around that love was never a popular movement. And there have not been many people that are pursuing this idea of togetherness in history in general. And that applies to Hong Kong very much. But when we started, I mean, there was only Bad Time Disco doing that. I really like, or at least from my vicinity and from what I could see. And we kind of took a lot of inspiration from what you guys were doing, and now we're doing workshops at the radio.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and like we've been do you want to talk about the argument that we had?
Oh yeah, sure.
Do
you want to frame it?
Sure, yeah. I mean, like what I've always appreciated about Ani is how straightforward she is, and I'll stand by that, you know, and I really like, to me, that is rare. And you know, it's interesting. I can't
turn it off. This is the problem.
You know, as you should, because I think we're all different, you know, and we all need to learn that there are different personalities and there's like, we can coexist, you know, and that, and we can actually understand each other rather than when we don't understand, we distance ourselves. In my opinion, when you don't understand, you actually go in and you kind of learn more about a person or how, especially in like, I always talk about this, and maybe I'll do a little quick vent, is that as an Iranian, like Iranians are passionate people because we have been through so much struggle. You know, like my parents have been raised in war. For me to even have the privilege of being outside of Iran, pursuing a degree is a privilege, and it's something that my parents have had to really work hard for. I've had to really work hard for. And it's something that I'm constantly aware of, that I'm a privileged Iranian who was able to, a queer Iranian, to go out of Iran. So, you know, whatever you want to call it, coping mechanism, like way of life, I am a very passionate person. And for me, I want to build a better future for visibility for Iranians. And for that reason, I'm also pretty straightforward, I would say. I think I get the same comments.
Probably.
But that's
probably
that
the same people dislike us.
Yeah. No, but and to me it's okay, because, you know, I actually don't expect them to understand where I'm coming from, because they have never had the experiences that I've had, and frankly they don't make an effort into understanding. And I think that that's okay. You know, like I don't expect understanding from anyone at this stage of my life. I want to say I appreciate when someone is straightforward, and it's like something that I value in myself, to be honest, as I value in other people. So coming to the discussion kind of that we had was that you actually just gave me a ring, and you were like, I want to just talk to you about a few things. They've been kind of building up, and I wanted to communicate it with you. And you basically were saying that you feel like that MÖTH was copying Bad Time Disco in the way that we operate, which I agree with, actually. To like, we kind of just disagreed on the word copying, I guess.
Yeah.
But and I think we kind of just had a moment of like, we were both like, I got frustrated on that call, but we're still trying to make it work.
I remember that I was at a bus station and it was
late at night
and it was really late. And so it was also like, there's this context.
Yeah, but at the same time, I could feel like you are trying to understand me, and I had that trust.
Yeah.
And I know that you had it as well, and we were kind of just like talking it out. And we kind of wanted to bring that up publicly because we think it's important to talk about these kind of disagreements. And I think, like, what was your interpretation of it? Like, how do you think we resolved it?
I think it was fine. I mean, I was very straightforward with you, and I said, Ahura, I want to talk about some things, even given the basis that, for example, we have a personal relationship, but BTD also has a relationship with MÖTH.
Yeah.
These are both good relationships.
Yeah.
So on the basis of this relationship, I think you can really have a talk and talk about a conflict with somebody.
Yeah.
If it was not so good of a relationship, or if we already had some type of issue, I think it could have been misconstrued differently, and lots of people have misunderstandings. But what my intention of having this talk with you was to repair our relationship for the future, because what I felt is that if I couldn't be honest, I would eventually become resentful about things that you're not even aware of. And I would never have brought it up to you. And this is unfortunately such a common dynamic around the entire world, maybe especially in Hong Kong, but it's around the entire world. I would say in many friendships and then in many professional relationships, we don't even bring up issues, and these things kind of accumulate. I would say that it wasn't just the fact that I felt that, you know, MÖTH was taking inspiration from BTD. It was the fact that I felt that I support MÖTH, and that I had, for example, maybe I had made a concession for something, or that I had been supportive in these different ways. And what I really wanted to feel from you and also from MÖTH was I wanted to feel a reciprocity in our relationship. And I also felt that it was getting messy because you were actually working at BTD. And so there is this overlap. We want to support each other. We want each other to do well, but it's very hard when there's like no boundaries. And also when the scene in Hong Kong is so small and it's informal and things are based on our personal relationships. So I kind of wanted to take a step back and see like, what is our personal friendship? And then what is the relationship between BT and MÖTH, and how can I feel that I'm also better supported? Because I do feel like I wanted to support MÖTH's like fundraiser, for example. I've just in general been so happy that this collective is doing so well in Hong Kong. So I often find myself in kind of the position in Hong Kong where I do feel like I've done a lot for other people, and I don't know how much they've done for me or how much they're doing for BTD. So we want to ask like very respectfully for this support as well, because the type of work that we're doing, it does come at a cost. I actually think that when BTD does a little break every year, and when I go on tour, I do actually feel like that's a little time and space for people to reflect on, you know, do they miss it at all? Is it actually necessary here? You know, I don't need to be here either specifically. Maybe we're both privileged in the sense that we have some mobility and some connection to the world outside of Hong Kong. But very specifically as a DJ, I do have connections and relationships elsewhere. So I really want to feel a sense of mutual appreciation for me, so that when I want to come back to Hong Kong, because also people want me to come back, because there's this good relationship and we can support each other.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like that was like a really, you kind of summarized what I was thinking in a way as well. And that in that moment when we were having the talk, like honestly, the main feeling that I had is that we really do appreciate what you do, but obviously, let's say it's not translating, right? And I think that is really a product of the system in that in Hong Kong, as organizers, as DJs, we don't often say that we appreciate each other, you know, and it actually feels like people are trying to bring you down more often than not, which, you know, fair game. I again, like, I'm not saying that, let's say, oh my god, people are trying to bring me down. Like, I actually think there's a lot of validity in some of the things that they're saying, and but also understanding that it's like it's a small city, we can always just talk it out, you know, and having that open communication and openness is, I think, really, really, again, just rare. I'd say
Yeah.
there's a lot of scarcity of like of communication and
This-
openness.
This podcast should be like an appreciation show for each other, you know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I think I completely agree with you. We should celebrate each other. We
Yes.
should lift each other up. I think that with the platforms and collectives who have similar values to us, I think we do try to do that.
Yes, I think
And
so.
we can create more opportunities to do that. I think especially since you're running, when we run these these explicitly community spaces, like the record store. The record store was an explicit community space. We never did a record store for personal gain or because you can make so much money from selling records. That's not the reason why I did it.
Yeah.
We did it to run a community space, and so many people did their first events there ever.
Yeah, and I think this brings me back to, again, like how I was feeling at that moment. I was actually thinking that it like sucks that, let's say, Ani doesn't feel like she's appreciated in the city, because you do positively impact the city anyways, and there are a lot of people who appreciate you. And I kind of, you know, I do feel the same sometimes where I've gotten used to it. I'll put it that way. I went through this with my therapist in like 2019, you know. She was like, AHURA, people do appreciate you. They just won't say it. Like, that's how the culture is.
We need to say it. I was thinking this yesterday for Eunice when I was at Current Plans.
Yeah, really.
For these people, some people are really kind of doing a little bit more. Let's just say it.
Yeah.
We need to say this. We need to visibilize it, because this type of work is so exhausting. You're dealing with people all the time. I think people don't understand how emotionally exhausting it is to deal with people. To coordinate
and like, honestly, like for me, it's like I'm genuinely, whenever I'm working with anyone, I'm trying to understand them, because they are my teammate in that moment, and we're going to work together. And I care about my teammates, and I want to learn more about you. But it does take a lot of energy to learn about all the different personality type.
Totally. How many volunteers?
I would say, you know, like I have mine, everybody has theirs.
You have like 26 volunteers right now for
MÖTH. But do you know, okay, maybe we'll come to this. Like, it's about building the culture of appreciation, because genuinely, like, I love the volunteers that are working here. And I think we found a way to engage people and to work with people in a way that they don't feel exploited. They don't feel exploited. They have full freedom over what time they come to the radio. They have. We always tell them, if you need help setting up a DJ thing for your party, if you need advice on how to throw a party, if you need to learn DJing, you can always let us know. We're a skill sharing community. We're not living individualistically. When you come and volunteer here, come with your friends, bring your friends, sit at the balcony, smoke a little cigarette, you know, grab a drink. This is, like, again, building that culture from scratch is kind of difficult, but I also think that's the fight. That's why we're here. You know, I always think Hong Kong needs a crazy Iranian who won't back down, and Hong Kong needs an Ani, you know, to really not back down and to really push forward and be criticized but continue. And so in that moment, I just felt like it sucks that, let's say, Ani doesn't feel like we appreciate her, because we really, really do. And I don't want her to think that we're ever, like, you know, I'm ever approaching you as like just something that I take from, right? I just think maybe in that moment, hadn't thought of ways that we can contribute in a positive way. And I think once we spoke about, okay, this is how BTD can, like, you know, we can work together in a more reciprocal way. I think that's kind of, I was like, yeah, that sounds like really good. Let's do it. And it's like easy, you know, actually to the things that you were, let's say, asking for were not something really that difficult for us to do. And it's, to be honest, we're more than happy to do it. And I think, again, that's why the volunteer thing works, right? In my opinion, like, it's because it's an organic way to build relationships by also contributing to a common goal. Like, to me, it's really reflective of the world that we're living in. You know, you're fighting towards this goal, and everyone can contribute to their own level, to their own extent. And whoever feels like it's time for them to step up and do more, they're always welcome to. They should never be. They should never face backlash to say you're doing too much or like you're too much. I don't believe in that. You know, and I think. I hope that, like, let's say all the especially those, we have a lot of students or volunteers, kind of learn that even if you contribute to something in a small way, I really appreciate it. You get what I mean? As a person who's, like, let's say, founding this radio with my friends, like, I really appreciate it. We appreciate you as a community, and I think that was something that we try to overcome with MÖTH. And honestly, listen, it was practice. It was really practice to be like, hey, we're a group of 20 people working on this project, let's say. Even though I'm, let's say, doing a lot of physical work, or let's say I'm doing so much and I'm spending more time on it. Like, I think there were a select few that were spending more time on the project than others. But I don't believe that the other people were not contributing, you know, and like they weren't doing anything. You know, to me, it's like, you bring yourself, you bring what you're good at. And even if you don't know what you're good at, you come and figure it out by being a part of community and contributing in a small way. You know, and it's by contributing that you just understand what you're good at and what you can bring to the table. And I think everybody has something to bring. And yeah, so I think that's why, like, wrapping it up in that topic is that we do really, like, appreciate Bad Times Disco and everything that you do. And to me, it sucks that any promoter would have to feel, or any, you know, DJ or anyone have to feel like they're not appreciated.
I think everybody must go through periods of feeling like that, but especially in a relationship context, eventually over time, you just notice if, you know, you're doing more for the other person than they are doing for you. It would be very comparable to a friendship. So personally, this is just something that I'm going through this year, where I'm just realizing that, you know, I'm a very generous person and I do a lot for other people, but I'm gonna start asking my friends to show up more for me. I'm gonna start asking other people to show up more for me. I'm gonna start asking you know, maybe other promoters to support BTD in this way, etc. So it's a process of you also thinking about, you know, what you deserve and what you would like, just ask for it. It can be very hard, maybe especially for women to do. And I don't really want to be in this logistical caretaking role for everybody all the time. I also like to be taken care of. I also like to be invited to things. I also like to go to something where I see that it's very well done. So we can all occupy different roles, you know, temporarily. But I mean, what you talked about is really interesting, because I think what you're doing to a much larger extent than me is you're really going to nurture the next generation of people who are going to become like us. And that's the point. What we're doing is so high impact, like so high energy, so high everything. It isn't really sustainable for the long run. And I think that's okay. Nobody's asking for you to do this for the next 20 years of your life. We all want to do what we can in the moment that we can. This is maybe just a phase of your life where you can do these things. But, you know, what's the generation after us? Who are the people who are going to be moving things, booking things, organizing things? If you're really concerned about, like, underground nightlife and sustainability, you should be doing the type of things that you're doing.
Yeah.
You should be investing
Yeah.
and training people.
Yeah.
You know, I would only hope that some of the staff, some of the production team at BTD, I would only hope that they're inspired to run their own projects and do things.
Yeah.
But I also think it's it's perfectly okay if they don't. This is so much work.
And like there are two things that I wanted to touch upon. Like one was the fact that we were talking about, like, let's say you doing the record store because it was for the community, right? And that community space. And let's say we're doing the radio for the community.
Yep.
I also want to acknowledge that it does benefit us as well. And like that's what I wanted to be upfront about, because to me, it's like we're not denying that this is a mutually beneficial relationship. But I think to expect somebody to give and give and give and not get anything in return is a neoliberal idea, in my opinion. And like this person who's sacrificing their whole life for the liberation of their people, you know? No, like...
It's very capitalist, honestly. I was walking in Wanchai today and I saw an advertisement that is basically like this, you know. So what is success? You have to give up your entire life for success. You know, you look forward and you never look back. I don't think that I'm saying that either the radio or the record store are these sacrificial projects. But to a certain extent, I do believe that a lot of people who run underground community-oriented projects, we are not, of course, we're not being compensated in a way that is going to reflect the amount of time that you and energy that you put into these things. So did the record store also benefit us? Of course it did. But is it at all commensurate with the insane, it was an insane project for me and my partner, and I burnt out on the record store for sure. So I think it's fair and it's to be expected that part of these projects have a little bit of a sacrificial nature. And I wish one thing that we did better as like underground promoters or even as leftist people, I wish we did better in learning how to work with people's inherent self-interest, because we are self-interested people. We're self-interested and then we also are community oriented. So in what ways can we make it work together? And I think that's what you're trying to do with the volunteers, and that's what I'm trying to do with the staff and the production team. Everyone's paid, everybody's compensated, but we really ask them, like, what do you want to get out of this? What do you want to learn? What do you want to grow? What is in this for you? It's not necessary. It's not about money, but you got to get paid. But what's in it for you? And capitalize on that self-interest and say that, you know, I'm interested in what you want for yourself. You're an individual. We want you to see yourself as part of a society. But you are an individual. And I think leftist movements do like pretty badly on this. At least maybe through the arts, we're a little bit more connected to people's like self-expression, their individual desires. You know.
I agree, and I think like for me, it's like individual. Like actually, my favorite philosophy. Oh my god, everyone would know, and they would make fun of me for this, but it's actually called individual psychology or individual philosophy, which doesn't mean that you are an individual. It means that you are an individual within a community. And those two things are so tightly interconnected that if you ever say, I'm so independent, you're lying, because everything that you consume comes from someone else, first of all. And if you just say, I'm this being that is so just like in servitude of other people without having any of my self-interest, you're also lying.
Absolutely not. And that's been the problem with all of these like populist leaders as well, you know, because it's completely false. This idea that a leader is so sacrificial for their people, and they're, you know, that's when they're raking in.
So that's why I wanted to bring up like the benefit that it brings to us, because to me, I want people to understand that it's really fair, you know, like it's like we give to the community and the community gives back to us. We don't need to be dying over this, you know, we don't need to be only just paying a price for it constantly. But as you said, it has an element of sacrifice to it because it is a lot of work, and I have a full-time job to take care of. I have like I have a lot of responsibilities, and like I'm in Iran away from my family for like 7-8 years. It's been tough. It's been a tough time. But yeah, another thing that I wanted to touch up on, which I think we're kind of like we're ending the year. I do want to kind of get to a little. I guess just like the last thing that I want to talk about is literally just on a small scale your event that is coming up.
Yeah.
Like, what are you most looking forward to? Everything that we've spoken about, like, why should people come to a Bad Times Disco party? And what is special about this upcoming event in terms of like what can the people coming to the event kind of expect?
Well, I'm always the main promoter of BTD. It's funny. I think I am actually the person who ends up getting people to come because I speak about it in this way. It's just a party that I'm very passionate about. Yeah. I think that our crowd is amazing, and I think that people really come to dance. And when you come, you just see that it's this very non-judgmental, extremely diverse crowd that is really there to like celebrate each other and to celebrate life without glossing over the hardest parts.
Yes.
We're doing a guest list based fundraiser at the next party as well. So Batoon House, which is the only shelter for migrant domestic workers in Hong Kong, they lost their government funding. So Guabin has been fundraising for them. Yep. We've been supporting. So half of that fundraiser is going to them. And then BTD also has this ongoing living wage campaign, which is migrant domestic workers demanding a living wage, which would be way higher minimum statutory wage than they're being paid right now. So there's always so many reasons to come. It's just a party that is very connected to our values of an actual just and fair society where people are paid living wages and they have decent housing, and where we respect each other in the party. We have, we have an amazing staff. I think I'm really looking forward to the fact that it's daytime. We don't do many daytime parties. The fact that it's daytime means that it's going to be even more inclusive to the point where I never see, parents and babies at our parties. We don't see older people. This is a very wholesome element that we wish we could have in the, nighttime parties, but unfortunately they just don't want to come to a party that's up until 6 a.m. So our last party was a rave at night. We had a very young crowd, and I think what I'm looking forward to for this party is that it's going to be way more diverse in terms of age group. Migrant leaders are also coming. I'm just looking forward to seeing everybody. It's a season opening. It's a reunion. I haven't seen these people for 6 months. So it's a little bit for me. It's for everybody else as well. Everybody misses each other. And I think that's the reason to come. This month is really jam-packed in Hong Kong. Yeah. The government is deciding to fund these mega festivals. And I think this is really doing a number on independent promoters. So we are an independent underground promoter. We don't receive any funding from the government. And I think now we have to compete with even more options for people, which I'm glad that people in Hong Kong have more options and everybody deserves more options. But we're definitely asking our public, and we're definitely asking a new public as well, to really think about, supporting these community-oriented events. We're not a mega festival, and we're not a one-off event that really they could care less about you. They could care less about you, your name, who you're from, what you do. This is a completely different vibe, and we definitely push music that is not pop music. So this is an opportunity for people to get to know, underground dance DJs. The two guests that we've invited, we typically invite DJs who are not famous, They are this global niche of DJs who play in the same scene that I play. They're very well known by the people who know. I don't know how else to describe it, you know? They're well booked by people in this very niche, like left field electronic music scene. And I'm excited to host them. I think that our DJs always do a great job. We have a great sound system, their set design. I think it's just a great party. I'm very passionate about it. I always think like when I'm at a good party, I just feel that all the elements are there and that nothing is missing. And that's kind of what I want it to be. That's what I hope it is for everybody on the 23rd.
Yeah, and you genuinely, you guys absolutely never miss. And I think every party that I've been to has been so unique. And I think you bring this element of novelty to each experience with your set design, with your themes. And again, we really do appreciate you in the city. And I'll go say it on record. We appreciate
MÖTH.
Yeah. Yeah, like we do need to say that out more often. And
yes, this podcast series is going to turn into an appreciation.
We should do it a series, exactly. Yeah. And I think, you know, we can disagree on things, and I think we're, of course, like we appreciate each other, and we can still be critical of what we're doing. And I think, but at the end of the day, we are working in a team. And I think to conceptualize yourself as a team with people in Hong Kong is a little bit foreign of a concept. But I think that's why we're doing the things that we're doing. And if we didn't think there was things that we could do better, we wouldn't be here, right? And that's why we have to just push. And I'm going to see you guys on 23rd of November. Yay! I'll be there as a guest dancing it off. And I'll just wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode, whatever the series is. But thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, AHURA. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye, guys. Bye. Have a good night.